Human hands alien girl a towel. Alien girl reaction leaves human speechless. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. John Thompson had never imagined that one day he would find himself standing in front of an alien, unsure of what to do with something as simple as a towel. But there he was, in the middle of the most awkward situation of his life. Zelira, an alien girl from a distant galaxy, had just arrived on Earth for an intergalactic diplomatic exchange, and he had been assigned to guide her through some of Earth's cultural norms. As they walked through the park, Zelira, with her striking blue skin and vibrant violet eyes, looked around in awe, her every step drawing attention from curious onlookers. John had noticed her fascination with everything around her, the flowers, the animals, the human way of life. But now, as they made their way back to the hotel, the situation took an unexpected turn. A sudden downpour had begun, the rain coming down in sheets, and John, in a rush to protect Zelira, quickly removed his jacket, offering it to her. However, she didn't seem to understand the gesture. She stared at the jacket, her brow furrowing in confusion. It wasn't a language barrier. John had been briefed that Zelira was fluent in Earth languages thanks to the universal translator device she wore, but it was clear that the concept of offering a piece of clothing in such a way wasn't something she was used to. Then, he had an idea. Reaching into his bag, he pulled out a towel he had packed earlier, meant for the beach. With a sheepish smile, he handed it to her, explaining, "You can use this to dry off. It's pretty absorbent." Zelira took the towel, her fingers brushing against his hand for a brief moment, sending an unexpected warmth through him. She turned the towel over in her hands, examining it from all angles. Her expression was one of complete bewilderment, as if she had never seen such a simple object before. "You humans use this to dry your skin?" she asked, her voice a melodic mix of curiosity and confusion. John blinked, taken aback by the question. Yeah, that's what it's for," he replied, trying to explain. "You know, when you get wet, you just rub it on your skin, and it dries you off." Zelira nodded slowly, but the confusion didn't leave her eyes. "And this is normal?" she asked, gesturing to the towel and then to his own clothes, as if trying to piece together the logic behind human behavior. "Well, yeah, it's pretty normal," John chuckled awkwardly, realizing just how strange human customs must seem to an alien. "But it's not just about drying off," he added, trying to make it sound less absurd. "It's also about comfort. Sometimes, after a long day, you just need to feel warm and dry." Zelira's eyes widened slightly, and she held the towel to her body, pressing it against her skin as if testing it. John waited for her reaction, hoping that she would understand, but instead, she looked up at him with a puzzled expression. "I don't understand. You use this to make yourselves more comfortable?" she repeated, her tone almost incredulous. John couldn't help but laugh at the innocence in her voice. "Yeah, that's right," he said, smiling. "It's one of those little things that make life a bit better. Trust me, it feels much better than being all wet." Zelira paused for a moment, processing his words. Then, much to John's surprise, she took the towel and, with a sudden, swift motion, wrapped it around herself like a blanket, her violet eyes shining with a mix of triumph and amusement. John stood there, speechless, as he watched her, unsure whether to be impressed or completely baffled by her unconventional approach to a simple human object. She looked up at him, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I think I understand now," she said, her voice filled with newfound curiosity. "This towel is for more than just drying. It's about understanding human comfort." John just nodded, still trying to process how something as simple as a towel could leave him speechless. But as Zelira smiled, wrapping herself up snugly in the towel, John couldn't help but laugh at how easily the simplest of actions could bridge the vast cultural gap between humans and aliens. As John stood there, still trying to process what had just happened, Zelira remained wrapped in the towel, her posture now relaxed. The tension in the air shifted, and for a moment, there was an awkward silence between them. Zelira, her vibrant violet eyes fixed on him, seemed to study him with a new level of curiosity, as if she were seeing him through a different lens now. John could feel the weight of the moment, realizing how strange yet fascinating it was to communicate across such vast cultural differences. His thoughts were interrupted when Zelira spoke again, her voice soft but filled with a hint of wonder. "So, this comfort, it's really important to you, isn't it?" she asked, her tone genuine but still laced with that distinct foreign curiosity. John, slightly caught off guard by the question, nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess you could say that," he replied, his voice softer now. "Comfort is something we all need, no matter who we are or where we come from. It's one of those little things that make life better, you know." Zelira tilted her head slightly, processing his words. "But why is it so important? You've seen my species. We don't have time for such things. We have other priorities." John smiled, understanding where she was coming from. "I get that," he said. "But even in the busiest lives, we all need moments to just be ourselves. To relax, to feel at ease. It's about balance." Zelira seemed to mull over this, her gaze drifting off for a moment as if contemplating something deeper. After a pause, she turned back to John. "I think I understand," she said slowly, her voice thoughtful. "You humans, you always seem to find a way to adapt." John, still in awe of the transformation from confusion to understanding in her, stepped forward slightly. "You know," he said, "it's not just the towel. It's also about sharing moments, helping each other, understanding each other. That's what makes us human, I think." Zelira's gaze locked onto his, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade into the background. Her voice, now calmer, responded, "Perhaps, for all your strange ways, there is wisdom in that. It's a concept I can't say I fully grasp, but I can appreciate." John, feeling a sense of connection in that simple exchange, smiled warmly. "You'll get there," he said, "one step at a time. We all do." The rain began to ease up, the storm finally passing, and the first rays of sunlight started to break through the clouds, casting a soft golden hue across the city. Zelira, still wrapped in the towel, stood beside him, her presence now less foreign, more like a companion on this strange journey of discovery. They continued walking together, side by side, and for the first time, the cultural divide between them didn't seem so wide. In that moment, John realized that understanding, kindness, and even something as simple as offering a towel could go a long way in bridging the gap between two worlds. As the day progressed, the last remnants of the rain clouds slowly drifted away, leaving behind a clear, vibrant sky. The air was still fresh, the scent of wet earth and greenery hanging in the air as John and Zelira continued their walk through the park. Zelira, now more comfortable in her towel, seemed to be less distracted by the strange customs of Earth and more focused on the scenery around them. The park was filled with various species of trees, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight, and flowers in vibrant colors that had caught her attention earlier. She took in everything with awe, her violet eyes wide with wonder. John couldn't help but notice how different she seemed now, the initial confusion replaced by genuine curiosity. "So, do you like Earth so far?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Zelira glanced at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's overwhelming," she admitted, her voice soft, "but also fascinating. Your world is full of so many details. I'm used to the vastness of space, but here, everything feels so alive." John smiled, glad to see her opening up. "Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. Earth's a bit chaotic, but in a good way. You'll get used to it." They walked in silence for a few moments, the peaceful atmosphere allowing them both to relax. It was strange, John thought, how comfortable he felt with Zelira now. What had started as a diplomatic duty was slowly transforming into something more meaningful. As they reached the edge of the park, where a small cafe sat with outdoor seating, John suggested, "How about we stop for a drink? I think you might enjoy the local coffee. It's a bit different from anything I've had in space." Zelira raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Coffee?" she repeated, her voice filled with both curiosity and confusion. "What is it?" John chuckled. Well, it's hard to explain. It's a drink that gives you a little boost. You'll see when you try it." He led her to an outdoor table and ordered 2 coffees, one for him and one for her, hoping she'd like it. When the drinks arrived, Zelira took the cup cautiously, eyeing it with suspicion. She inhaled the aroma, the rich, earthy smell filling her senses, and then took a small sip. Her eyes widened in surprise as the warm liquid hit her tongue. "This is amazing," she exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine awe. "I don't know how to describe it, but it's like it's alive." John laughed, feeling a sense of satisfaction at her reaction. "Yeah, coffee does that to you. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but once you get it, it's hard to go back." Zelira took another sip, savoring the taste, her smile growing. "I could get used to this," she said, looking at him with a new level of respect. "Your planet. It's strange, but I can see why so many species choose to visit." John felt a warmth spread through him at her words, but he tried to remain casual. "We've got our flaws, but I guess there's something about Earth that's hard to resist." They spent the next hour chatting about everything from the differences between their cultures to their favorite foods. Zelira was a quick learner, and soon, she was sharing stories from her home planet, where the customs were so different from anything John had ever known. As the sun began to set, casting a soft orange glow across the sky, John couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. This wasn't just some diplomatic mission anymore. It was the beginning of something he hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, they could learn from each other after all. Zelira, finishing her coffee, looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I've learned more about your world in one day than I thought I ever would," she said softly. "And I've enjoyed it, more than I expected." John smiled, his heart light. "Same here. It's nice to know that even the most different worlds can find something in common." The two of them sat there for a while, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the sky, each lost in their thoughts, but connected in a way that neither of them had anticipated when the day began. As the days passed, John and Zelira continued to explore the many wonders of Earth together, though each encounter seemed to bring more surprises for them both. Zelira, still adapting to human customs, was beginning to enjoy her time on Earth, and John was becoming more fascinated by her unique perspective on things. They had visited parks, museums, and even a small Earth cafe, where Zelira had tried a few more local dishes, though she was still adjusting to the flavors. The cultural differences that had once felt like an impenetrable barrier were now just minor quirks they shared, laughing over every misunderstanding and cultural shock. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet neighborhood, Zelira looked up at the towering buildings around them, her expression pensive. "These structures are strange," she commented, her violet eyes scanning the towering skyscrapers. "Where I come from, we build closer to the earth, integrated with nature. It feels like humans have built above the ground, trying to separate themselves from it." John glanced over at her, considering her words. "Yeah, I guess you could say we've gotten pretty good at separating ourselves from nature. We've built a lot of things that make our lives easier, but sometimes we forget what it's like to just live in harmony with the world around us." Zelira nodded thoughtfully. "Your species has done much in such a short time, but I wonder what you've lost in the process." John didn't have an immediate answer to that. It was one of those questions that made him think deeply, something he had never really considered before. They continued walking in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the conversation lingering between them. When they reached a small park, Zelira stopped, her gaze falling on a group of children playing with a small dog. "What is that?" she asked, pointing at the dog with curiosity. John smiled. "That's a dog. It's a common pet here. People usually have them for companionship or protection." Zelira crouched down, studying the dog with intense interest. The children, noticing her attention, hesitated for a moment before one of them approached cautiously. "Do you want to pet him?" the little girl asked shyly, holding out the dog. Zelira looked up at John for reassurance. "Is it safe?" she asked, her voice filled with caution. John chuckled softly. "Yeah, dogs are pretty friendly, most of the time." Zelira, still a little unsure, reached out and gently stroked the dog's fur. To her surprise, the dog didn't react aggressively, but instead nuzzled her hand, licking her fingers. A small smile tugged at her lips. "It feels warm," she said softly, almost to herself. The little girl giggled. "He likes you." John watched the exchange with a smile, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Zelira, though still somewhat reserved, seemed to be opening up more, and he couldn't help but feel a growing connection between them. As they continued to watch the children play with the dog, Zelira turned to him, her violet eyes meeting his with a new expression, one that spoke of understanding. "Perhaps," she said thoughtfully, "there is more to your species than I realized. You have this capacity for kindness, for connection, that I didn't expect." John's smile deepened. "We're not perfect, but yeah, we try. I think that's what makes humanity different. We might mess up, but we care, and we're always trying to improve." Zelira looked down at the dog again, her expression softening. "Your world, it's more complex than I first understood," she admitted. "But I think I'm beginning to see its beauty, even in the smallest things." John felt a warmth spread through him as they stood there together, watching the children and the dog. The differences between their worlds seemed less important now, overshadowed by the understanding that had begun to blossom between them. In that moment, John realized that their journey together was just beginning. And though they came from entirely different worlds, perhaps they could learn something from each other that neither had expected. The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time, John felt a sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, their worlds could find a way to coexist, not just peacefully, but harmoniously. And with that thought, they continued their walk, side by side, each step bringing them closer not just to understanding one another, but to a future that felt uncertain, yet full of possibility. The days turned into weeks, and John and Zelira continued to share quiet moments in between their busy schedules. Earth's cityscape had become familiar to Zelira, who no longer seemed so out of place walking among humans. She had started asking more questions, and John found himself surprised by her deep insights into things he had long taken for granted. One evening, after a long day of sightseeing and visits to historical sites, they found themselves at the edge of a small lake just outside the city. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the water's surface, and the air was cool but pleasant. Zelira stood at the edge, looking at the reflection of the sky on the water, her violet eyes wide with wonder. It feels different from the stars," she said quietly, as if speaking more to herself than to John. John, standing beside her, followed her gaze. "Yeah," he agreed. "There's something about Earth's nature. It's not as vast as space, but it has a depth to it, a life that's hard to explain." Zelira turned to him, her gaze filled with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "Space is endless, but here, in your world, everything has meaning. Every rock, every tree, every person." John smiled, feeling a sense of connection growing between them. He had always loved Earth, but hearing her describe it made him see his own world in a new light. "It's strange, isn't it?" John replied, "How something so small can feel so big." They sat down on a nearby bench, the peaceful sounds of the water lapping at the shore surrounding them. Zelira seemed to relax, and for the first time, John noticed that she wasn't just looking at the world around her. She was starting to engage with it. She picked up a small stone from the ground and turned it over in her hand, her fingers tracing its surface. "On my planet, stones like this would just be discarded," she said. "But here, everything feels significant." John nodded, understanding what she meant. "Yeah, that's how we see things here. We don't always notice it, but everything has a purpose, even the things that seem insignificant." Zelira's gaze lifted from the stone to meet his eyes. "You've taught me a lot about your species, John," she said softly. "I've learned so much more than I expected. It's strange how something as simple as a rock can change the way I see your world." John looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I didn't think I'd be teaching you anything," he said with a smile. "I thought I was just here to show you around. But I think I've learned a lot from you too." Zelira smiled back, and for a moment, the weight of their differences seemed to vanish. They were just two beings, sitting by a lake, sharing a quiet understanding. "Maybe," Zelira said thoughtfully, "it's not about the differences. Maybe it's about learning from each other." John agreed, his heart light. "Yeah, I think you're right." The sun had dipped below the horizon now, the sky fading into twilight. The city lights began to twinkle in the distance, but for John and Zelira, the world felt small, intimate. They didn't need to speak to understand each other. There was something about the quiet, something about the way the world seemed to breathe around them, that made everything feel just a little more connected. As the evening drew on, they sat in comfortable silence, knowing that no matter how different their worlds were, they had found something special, a bond that wasn't defined by their origins, but by the simple moments they shared. And in that moment, John knew that Earth wasn't just a place for humans. It was a place for learning, for understanding, and for discovering things about oneself and others, even across the stars. The weeks passed, and with each day that went by, John and Zalira found themselves learning more about each other and the world they came from. What had started as a simple exchange between a human and an alien had become something much more profound. The boundaries of their cultures seemed to shrink with every conversation, every new experience they shared. Zalira had become a regular presence in John's life, and though their differences were still apparent, they had found a rhythm, a kind of unspoken understanding that transcended language and customs. One afternoon, as they sat in a small cafe near the park, Zalira looked at John, her violet eyes thoughtful. "John, tell me something," she began, her voice low but filled with curiosity. "What is it like to feel human? To be connected to this world?" John paused, not quite expecting the question. He hadn't really thought about what it meant to be human in a long time. "I guess it's a lot of things," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "It's about connection, you know? It's about sharing moments with people, even the little ones. The good and the bad. It's what makes us who we are." Zalira listened intently, her head tilted slightly to one side. "And you feel connected to everything?" she asked. John nodded. "In a way, yeah. We may not always see it, but we're all connected. To each other, to the world around us, to everything." Zalira seemed to mull over his words, her fingers gently tapping on the table. "Your species," she said thoughtfully. "You have a way of embracing what you don't understand. You don't fear the unknown, you try to make sense of it." John smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him at her words. "Yeah, we try. It's not always easy, but that's what makes us human. We don't have all the answers, but we keep going. We keep learning." Zalira looked down at her hands, the soft light from the cafe window reflecting off her skin. "It's strange," she said softly, almost to herself. "Where I come from, everything is calculated. We don't leave much to chance. We know what to expect, what will happen. But here, with you, everything is unpredictable." John chuckled. "That's life for you. It's messy, but it's also what makes it beautiful. The unpredictability. It's what keeps us moving forward." Zalira's gaze lifted, meeting his eyes once more. "I think I'm starting to understand," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "The unpredictability is what makes life worth living. It's what makes every moment meaningful." John felt his heart beat a little faster at her words, a connection, sparking between them in that quiet moment. For a long time, he had seen the world through his own lens, but now, with Zalira's perspective, he was starting to see it through a new set of eyes. As they finished their coffee, John and Zalira sat there for a while, just enjoying the peace that had settled between them. The world outside continued on, but for them, in that small moment, time seemed to stand still. The differences between them no longer felt like barriers. Instead, they felt like opportunities. Opportunities to learn, to grow, to understand each other in ways that neither of them had ever imagined. And as they stood up to leave the cafe, side by side, John realized that what they had found wasn't just a fleeting connection. It was something that could change everything. It wasn't just about the exchange of cultures or knowledge. It was about something deeper, something that reached across the stars, connecting them in ways words could never fully describe. As John and Zalira continued their days together, a subtle shift began to occur. What had started as simple curiosity about each other's worlds had blossomed into something deeper. Zalira had learned to appreciate the unpredictable beauty of Earth, and John, in turn, had come to admire her intellect and perspective. They spent more time together, not just as tour guide and guest, but as two people discovering the intricacies of each other's lives. One afternoon, as they wandered through a botanical garden, Zalira stopped in front of a large, ancient tree. "This one is different," she said, her fingers brushing the bark. John looked up, noticing the tree's wide trunk and twisted roots that seemed to stretch deep into the earth. "Yeah, it's one of the oldest trees in the garden," he explained. "It's been here for centuries. People say it's a symbol of endurance, that no matter what happens around it, it keeps growing." Zalira studied the tree carefully. "It's strange. On my planet, we value efficiency and progress. We tend to focus on the future, always looking ahead. But this tree, it feels like it holds the past within it. John smiled, seeing the wisdom in her words. Yeah, that's the thing about nature here. It doesn't just live in the moment. It holds on to everything that's come before. It's like it's seen everything, and yet it still keeps growing. Zelira nodded, clearly deep in thought. I think that's why your species is so resilient. You can hold on to the past, but you also know how to move forward. John glanced at her, surprised by her insight. You really understand that? He asked, his voice soft. Zelira turned to him, her violet eyes filled with sincerity. I do. It's not easy, but I think it's what makes you who you are. They stood in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. The breeze rustled through the leaves above them, and the sounds of the garden seemed to fade away as they both took in the weight of the conversation. For the first time, John felt like he wasn't just explaining Earth to Zelira. He was learning something new about his own world through her eyes. The moment was interrupted when Zelira spoke again, her voice tinged with a quiet wonder. I never thought I'd find such beauty here, she said, almost in disbelief. John turned to her, a soft smile on his face. Sometimes, you just have to stop and look around to see it, he said. The world's full of little moments like this, if you're willing to notice them. Zelira looked at him, her expression thoughtful. You've shown me that. How to notice the little things, the moments that make life worth living. John chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through him. Well, maybe you've shown me something too, he said. How to appreciate the bigger picture. The things that don't always make sense right away, but eventually do. Zelira smiled back at him, the connection between them growing stronger with each passing day. They continued to walk through the garden, side by side, both aware that this bond they had formed was something extraordinary. It wasn't just about two people from different worlds coming together. It was about sharing perspectives, learning from one another, and finding common ground even when the distance between their worlds seemed insurmountable. As they reached the end of the garden, John stopped, turning to face Zelira. You know, this whole experience, it's not what I expected, he said, his voice filled with a sense of awe. Zelira raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? She asked. John looked out across the garden, his gaze lingering on the paths they had walked. I thought this was just supposed to be about showing you Earth, about teaching you our ways, he said. But it's turned into something else. I've learned more from you than I ever expected. Zelira's eyes softened, her voice quiet but genuine. I feel the same way, she said. This connection between us, it's something I never anticipated. But it's real. John smiled, his heart light. Yeah, he said, his voice filled with a quiet certainty. It's real. They stood there for a moment, the world around them fading into the background as they shared a silent understanding. In that moment, it wasn't about being from different worlds or cultures. It was simply about two people who had found something rare and beautiful in each other. And as they walked back toward the city, side by side, John realized that no matter what the future held, this bond would stay with them forever. The days that followed were filled with quiet conversations, shared moments, and the occasional unexpected discovery. John and Zelira found themselves growing more comfortable with each other, a bond strengthening that neither had anticipated when they first met. They spent time walking through the city, visiting new places, and learning about each other's worlds. Zelira, having begun to appreciate Earth's strange beauty, was now more curious than ever about human culture. One evening, as they sat in a small park near the city center, John asked, So, what do you miss the most about your home? Zelira looked up at the sky, her violet eyes softening as if she were lost in thought. I miss the stars, she said quietly. Back home, the sky is full of them. It's so vast and endless, like you can reach out and touch it. I've never seen anything like it here. John nodded, understanding. I can see how that might be hard. The stars are a big part of who you are, I guess. Zelira smiled, a small, wistful expression crossing her face. Yes, they are. But, she paused, looking over at him. There's something else I've come to appreciate about your world. It's the people. I never thought I'd find this kind of connection. But with you, John, it feels like I belong. John felt a warmth spread through him at her words. It wasn't something he had expected to hear, but in that moment, it felt right. He smiled, his voice gentle. I didn't think I'd ever find someone who could make me see Earth the way you do, he said. You've opened my eyes to so many things I took for granted. Zelira's eyes brightened. I've never met anyone quite like you. Your world is strange, yes, but it's also beautiful. It's full of things I never understood before. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in the peaceful evening. The quiet hum of the city around them seemed to fade away as they simply enjoyed each other's company. Finally, Zelira spoke again, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. I've always wondered if there's a way for different worlds to truly understand each other. To connect in a way that's real, not just about knowledge, but about something deeper. John looked at her, his expression thoughtful. I think we're doing it, right now, he said quietly. I think we're understanding each other in a way that goes beyond anything either of us expected. Zelira smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe understanding doesn't come from just learning about each other's worlds. Maybe it comes from sharing these moments. John smiled back, feeling the truth in her words. Yeah, maybe it does. The night grew darker, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. As they stood up to leave, side by side, John realized that their journey together was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. What had started as a simple mission had transformed into something far more meaningful. And as they walked through the quiet streets of the city, John knew that no matter where their paths would lead, the connection they had built would remain, a bond that had been forged in understanding, kindness, and the shared beauty of both their worlds. As the weeks turned into months, John and Zelira's bond continued to grow in ways neither of them had expected. Their time together had become a blend of discovery, both of the world around them and of each other. What had once felt like a strange and awkward meeting between two very different beings now felt like the start of something much deeper. One afternoon, as they walked along a quiet street lined with trees in full bloom, Zelira spoke up, her voice thoughtful. John, when I first arrived here, I didn't understand why humans do what they do. It all seemed so chaotic, so unorganized. But now, I see things differently. It's like your people live with a sense of urgency, but they also find time for moments like this. She paused, looking around at the peaceful scene. You find beauty in these little things. John smiled, feeling a sense of pride in her words. Yeah, we do. Sometimes, we get caught up in everything that's happening around us, but we always come back to moments like this. To nature, to the people we care about. Zelira nodded, taking in the sight of the blooming trees, their petals fluttering in the wind. It's strange. On my planet, we don't have time to appreciate things like this. We focus so much on progress and efficiency that we forget to stop and look around. John chuckled softly. Yeah, I get that. We've got a lot of room for improvement in that area, but we're learning one step at a time. Zelira turned to him, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. I think you've taught me something important, John, she said, her voice quiet but sincere. The importance of slowing down, of appreciating the moments, even the small ones. John felt a warmth spread through him at her words. I'm glad to hear that, he said softly. I think we both have a lot to teach each other. They walked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the rustling of leaves in the wind and the distant hum of the city. As they reached a bench overlooking a quiet lake, they both sat down, taking in the view. The water shimmered under the afternoon sun, and the reflection of the trees danced on the surface. Zelira took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the water. You know, she began, her voice thoughtful. On my planet, we look at the stars as our guide. We measure everything based on what we can see in the sky. But here, on Earth, I think the guide is different. It's not the stars that define you. It's the connections you make, the relationships, the way you live your lives. John was quiet for a moment, processing her words. I never really thought of it that way, he said finally. But I think you're right. Our connections are what really make life meaningful. It's not about what we achieve or how far we go. It's about who we become along the way. Zelira turned to him, her eyes filled with understanding. And who we become is shaped by the moments we share, by the lives we touch. John smiled, feeling a deep sense of appreciation for the path they had walked together. I think we've both learned that the hard way, he said softly. Zelira smiled back, her expression serene. Maybe, she said, her voice soft but confident. But we've also learned something beautiful. They sat there in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation settling between them. In that quiet moment, John realized just how far they had come, how much they had both changed in such a short time. What had started as a simple exchange of cultures and experiences had grown into something much more significant. They were no longer just a human and an alien, trying to understand each other's worlds. They were two individuals, bound by a deep and lasting connection. And as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the water, John knew that this connection would continue to grow. That no matter where life took them, they would always have the moments they shared, the lessons they had taught each other, and the bond they had built. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, he couldn't help but feel that the world, despite all its chaos and uncertainty, was exactly as it was meant to be.